Hi there. Today's mini lecture is on the Texas Governor and Plural Executive. Now, this is the Texas Constitution. You have been reading in the U.S. Constitution in your own textbooks, just in the appendix, and you know how very short it really is. But look at this baby, this bad boy. Oh my goodness, my goodness, my goodness. The Texas Constitution is really kind of a model of what a constitution should not be. It's really too long and very detailed, and quite a lot of amendments. There are more than 450 amendments, and they're all within the body of the Constitution. They're not at the back or anything. So this is our Texas Constitution, and Texas government is run off this thing. And it was written in 1876, and you remember, I hope, that the Texas Constitution was written by, remember, Democrats who had suffered at the time of the Reconstruction of the South. And they were very hurt. They had lost the right to vote and hold public office. Republicans had come into the state. Governor E.J. Davis loved central control of the state, and he became, when he left office, one of the most hated governors in the history of Texas. And when the Democrats got the right to hold public office and vote again, they voted out the Republicans for 100 years, as they did in all southern states, all the states of the Confederacy. So, because remember, the Republican Party was the party of Lincoln, and the Union and the Confederacy had the Democratic Party. So you didn't want to be a Yankee at that time. All right, so let's look at this Constitution that we're still using. I think the operative word on the Constitution is restrictive. Because of E.J. Davis's power when he was governor, when they wrote this Constitution, they wanted to restrict the legislature, and we've had a lecture on this. They made it part-time. And they really wanted to restrict the power of the governor because they remembered how powerful E.J. Davis was. And so they made a very weak Texas governor. I am not talking about the person inhabiting the office. I'm talking about the office itself. Of all the 50 states, Texas has probably the most constitutionally weak governor's office, and that was done on purpose by the writers of the Texas Constitution in 1876. Now, one of the ways that they make the governor weak is they give him what we call the plural executive. This is what this is. You have a governor, and then you have lieutenant governor, which would be sort of like the vice president, and all of these cabinet officials. But the interesting thing is, if you're talking about the president, and he has a vice president, and he has an attorney general, and he has a secretary of state, etc., he appoints all those people with the advice and consent of the Senate, and then if they don't please him or support him in his efforts or in his policies, he dismisses those people. Here, the governor is elected, and then all of these individual people are elected, and they're running their own campaigns. They don't run as a team with the governor. So you may have somebody who's a governor who may be a Republican. Your lieutenant governor could be a Democrat. Your attorney general could be a libertarian, etc., etc. Or you could have somebody who's a governor whose lieutenant governor wants to run against that person in the next election, and they're trying to undermine the governor, and they refuse to do what he wants to do in terms of his policies. So it's a very difficult way to govern a state when you have people that aren't part of your team doing their jobs. So please remember this, the plural executive, all these different people in the plural executive have their own elections and run their own campaigns, and then they have their own agendas. The lieutenant governor is probably the most powerful person in the state because the lieutenant governor heads up the Senate and has a lot of power over the Senate. The attorney general handles civil cases in the state of Texas. The Comptroller of Public Accounts is very important in this state because the Comptroller is the tax collector for the state. Texas uses the sales tax to pay for state things, and local businesses, many of you may work for those businesses, collect the sales tax, and they send it in to the Comptroller's office. The Comptroller also has to give every session of the legislature a revenue estimate because Texas, in our Constitution, is a pay-as-you-go state. We don't run a deficit in Texas. If we don't have the money, we don't buy the stuff. So it is the Comptroller that tells us what the estimate for the next 2 years in the biennium, we have to write a 2-year budget, is going to be as far as that comptroller can figure out. So revenue estimating and tax collecting, very, very important. Then we have a Commissioner of Agriculture, a Secretary of State, and I think I left one off. We have a Land Commissioner. No other state has this one. I think I left it off the list here, but you can add it. A Land Commissioner. Texas is the only state where, when we joined the Union, part of the deal was that we would keep our public lands. In other states, they went to the federal government, but in Texas, they're Texas lands. We have 22 million acres. And the land office is the one that hires them out or gets the rents from them. We have oil and gas leases on those, cattle on them, all kind of businesses on them. And the revenue that we get from public lands goes to the Permanent University Fund and the Public School Fund to help us pay for public education. There is a Secretary of State that runs elections in the state, and that person is appointed by the governor, his only appointment in the Plural Executive. And then there are 3 railroad commissioners that regulate oil and gas, and a state board of education that is elected. So that's just a little bit about the Texas governor and the Plural Executive. See you next time.